waiting on Edel Corrigan from Champagne, who's stuck in traffic somewhere, so hopefully she will make it. This evening will go as follows. We have sent out these little notepads. During the evening you are welcome to quickly go to one of the people and say, I want to pose a question, and you get a new sheet, okay? We have divided this evening into 4 topics. First one is housing, second one is health services, third one is sustainability, and the fourth one is community welfare. We will give each of the candidates 2 minutes to introduce themselves at the start, and afterwards we start with the first topic, which will be housing. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We hope to get through all of the questions you have. We might not be able to do this. We've allocated like 30 minutes for everybody for each topic, so that these are candidates with 2 minutes per question to answer. We hope they can stick to that, otherwise we take the microphone. For the first topic, just as a quick introduction, housing is probably the most heard on the doors. All of these candidates have been canvassing the last couple of weeks, and we as a group have been campaigning for housing now for the past year, and as you are all aware, there's loads of issues. We have over 4,000 people on the housing list in Louth, lots of families in limbo, afraid to lose their homes, in very unsecure tenancy. So this is around the topic of housing in the locality. So if at any given stage you want to pose a question, here's our lovely volunteers that will go around every now and then. Please just quickly raise your hand and they'll come to you. So I will hand over now. This is Sean Roach. He will preside over this and make sure everybody gets stopped after 2 minutes. And I will hand over to our first candidate, which is Eoin Daly from the Green Party.
Thank you very much, Sid. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name, as Sid says, is Eoin Daly, and I represent the Green Party here tonight. I'm standing in Dundalk, Carlingford, which is currently Mark Deary's seat, hoping to hold on to it for the party. My background is I worked in this theatre, as it happens, for many, many years. I worked in Dublin in theatre. 2010, I actually ended up losing my job, as I was just discussing there, in Cavan County Council, working for them in their arts theatre in Virginia. After that, around 2012, I decided I was going to go back to college. I went and studied mechanical engineering for a change and graduated DKIT in 2016, from where I went on to work in a product development company here locally in Dundalk. Since then, I was given the opportunity to return to my studies in DCU. I now work in the area of energy systems integration to do with water treatment. So one of the things I've touched on in this is there's an awful lot of research that goes back 30 years to do with climate change, to do with biodiversity loss, just topics that are really hot at the minute, and we haven't done anything about it. So Mark approached me about stepping down, and I said that this was an opportunity for me to take some of the stuff that has been sitting on shelves for 30 years to make a difference in County Louth that I really think we can make together. It's not going to be made by big, massive changes. It's going to be made by incremental, small changes by every one of us when it comes to solving these problems. And I don't just mean the typical green ones of environmental problems, climate change and biodiversity, as I mentioned. It's going to be housing, homelessness is going to be solved, and little incremental changes that we all need to make. These are the big ones, and we're going to have to tackle them together. And I hope to be that candidate to offer everybody someone who will work together with you to do that.
Thanks very much, Eoin. Maybe I'll hand the microphone over to Emma.
Good evening. As some of you may know, my name is Emma Coffey. I'm a sitting councillor for Fianna Fáil in Dundalk South. I was co-opted in 2016 after running as a general election candidate in the 2016 general election, and my running mate Declan Burnock got elected to the Dáil. So I was lucky enough that the members of Fianna Fáil voted and thought it was fit that I should take his place. So I have been on the council for the last 3 years, and I have to say it's been a very rewarding and frustrating process at the same time. Rewarding in that you actually get to see the local politics, and I say local politics for me equals local communities. Communities working together and really your local representatives kind of being a jack of all trades to try and get things, you know, a little bit of information here, funding there, where you can go about certain things. We really are a jack of all trades. It can be anything from passport issues to housing issues to playgrounds to community groups to 101 things. So it's never a boring job and always interesting. So if you like people, which I do, I love interacting with people, it really is a rewarding job on that front. Frustrating part is, you know, red tape, procedures, and the machine of the local authority and how we get things done, which is at times cumbersome, and at times you realise you are a small cog, but many small cogs can make a lot of changes, and I'm a great believer in that. My background is that I grew up in Dundalk, from Dundalk, and I'm a practicing solicitor. I have my own practice in Drogheda, but I live here with my family. I'm a 5-year-old, and like every working family, young people of our generation, I suppose, we were the Celtic Tiger cubs, and we were also the negative equity children, shall I just say, but at least we were lucky to have our own houses. We still have those houses with high mortgages, but we have a house. So there's many of those issues that I'm very passionate about. I'm not going to single out a lot, particularly one.
2 minutes.
But I would hope that I can be in a position that I can answer as many questions put forward to us tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
John, thanks. My name's John McGahon, and I'm the Fine Gael councillor for Dundalk For Change. I suppose I've been involved in politics from a very young age, and when I was 18 I mucked up my leaving cert, and I spent a year then working in Liverpool as a parliamentary intern for the Liberal Democrats. I then came back to Dublin and I studied history and politics in UCD, and after that I went back to London again, where I worked for the Liberal Democrats in the House of Lords as an advisor. I then came home in September 2013. I got selected by Fine Gael, and I basically went on a 7-month campaign to get myself elected to Louth County Council, and I managed to do that 5 years ago at 23 years of age. I now feel somewhat old at 28, going for re-election again. I've spent the last 5 years then working as a parliamentary assistant in Leinster House. I worked for 3 years for a TD and I worked for a senator. I'm also running for Dáil Éireann, and I hope to retain the Fine Gael seat, the second Fine Gael seat in Louth, whenever the general election comes around. But right now, like Eoin and Emma, my focus is on the next 16 days. And the one thing, and it's to be perfectly honest about it, the two things about what I love about being a councillor. I just love representing my hometown of Dundalk. I really do. And I absolutely love helping people sort out issues. You know, it sounds simple, but they're the two biggest kicks I get out of being a county councillor.
Thanks, John. In case anyone's wondering, I'm not a member of Dundalk For Change, nor am I, or have I ever been a member of any political party. I was asked to, what was the word that you used?
Precise.
No, that's not what.
Clarify. Moderate.
Which means I will try to be independent, keep the time, and hope to finish between 9:15, if that's okay. We will deal with 2 topics, then we'll have a very, very short break, and then just a comfort break, and then we'll continue with the last 2 topics. And if we have time, then we can have some quick fire questions until we come to the end of it. In case anyone is interested, just from a health and safety point of view, there are fire exits here and here in the event of a break. We would ask people to turn off or mute their mobile phones as well. What will happen is that questions will be read from the assembly here and will be either focused directly at a particular candidate or in general. We would hope the response will be no more than 2 minutes. If we stick to that, we should deal only with about 3 or 4 questions per topic. That's it, in order to take 2 hours. That's all it will take. So if we could go on to the very, very first topic, which is housing, and the first question.
A question to all of you by the looks of it. Do you support raising taxes on vacant or derelict properties in Dundalk? I suppose, you know, to elaborate on the question, you know, what do you plan on doing to sort of implement it then, if you are?
So Emma first. She cut me out first.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that there is a vacant site site register currently in operation in Louth County Council, although at the moment the executive are slow to fill that up. I can tell you, and I'm sure I'm not the only candidate that's sitting here, we've walked around and I'm sure we've seen many a vacant site that has not been basically put on that register. That register has been updated. There's obviously a levy with that vacant site, so I mean it's something that we are continuously raising, and in fairness I would say that Owen's colleague and now going to step down, Mark Deary, has been in the forefront of actually getting that vacant site register highlighted and active, shall we say. It's something that, in fairness, the Chief Executive has indicated that she's updating, they're actually reviewing it at the moment. I can tell you personally, I've submitted 3 point sort of sites already in the Lug area that I've seen on my steps walking around the town, but it's something I think as local representatives we need to be highlighting these vacant sites and need to be upkeeping the executive that there is these sites and are there levies being issued on them.
But in answer to the question, are you in favour or not of raising taxes?
No, I'm in favour. Well, there's no point in raising taxes if they're not going to be enforceable. And the first point I would say that we have a vacant levy site tax at the moment that's not currently being enforced and allowed. So it's up to us as local representatives to actually make sure that that is enforced.
So not only are they not being enforced, they're not looking at raising the ones that are already implemented already.
Well, the raising of those taxes is a central decision. We can't raise them. All we can do is ensure that the vacant levy sites that are already in place, the vacant levies, are being taken in, so to speak, by the executive. Currently, that's what we're doing. Now, we've been told that that vacant levy site register is actually being updated at the moment. There is doing one at the moment. It is now being reviewed, and we were requested to basically submit any vacant sites that we saw. So that's what we're in the process of doing.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, and I actually answered that very well. and like to follow on what she has said is absolutely correct in terms of like taxes, you know what I mean? So it's vacant site levy is the way to go about it, and chances that well, so I won't touch on that too much. But like I've seen the campaign that you guys as Dundalk For Change have done about highlighting the number of vacant homes around the place, and it is fantastic. What I would say is, and it has to be bear in mind, that Louth County Council is the best local authority in the country for using compulsory purchase orders to turn vacant homes into social housing. I live in Seatown. There's been about 5 houses in Seatown that we've managed to get simple. And the best thing about that is pure and semi-detached. You have a vacant house, antisocial problems, damp, all that type of stuff coming in. We get in there, we take the house over, we turn it around, and within 12 months we families living in them. So Louth County Council is the best local authority in the country for tackling vacant homes. One of the biggest things that is my pet peeve that I've raised at council meetings is look at Dunn Stores, look at the old Dunn Stores there in Park Street. That is the biggest 2 fingers ever to Louth County Council, the people of Dundalk. And the loophole that they get out of it is they just keep sticking a for sale sign up on it to say, oh, it's in the selling process. I've never seen a building for sale for so long. It's a decade with a for sale sign on it. And I've raised that at Louth County Council meetings. And unfortunately, the council's hands are more or less tied because we can't do anything about it. And there are loopholes that we need to close, and that's more so at a national level that we have to be able to do those at a local authority level.
Thanks, John. Owen?
In short, yes. Very much in favour of vacant property increase in tax. What these sites represent, you only have to go not very far from here to see. As John points out, there's Dunn Stores across the way. There's a massive empty site just beyond here, outside the town hall. It's ridiculous. It represents a waste of essentially resources. We put resources in place. We're in an urban area. There should not be a vacant site in the middle of a town like this. We can't expect places like Clanbrassil Street to thrive when there's nobody living within a reasonable distance of that. We need to be using these sites more efficiently. There's plenty of them around Clanbrassil Street in which we can build upon. The vacant property tax is very much something that can incentivise property owners to move towards the redevelopment of it. This idea of sitting on land's just appalling to me. You should not be sitting on a property that is either empty or undeveloped in an urban area, full stop. And if it is a national problem that we need to take to a national level, then it should be done. It should have been done. This idea, I do know that the register exists. I do know it's there. If it's a case of opening that up to the public to make submissions themselves that can be reviewed, then so be it. Let people. I know you guys are doing it online. You guys have your Instagram page where you noted the sites. I'm just appalled at the inaction that's going on at council and at national level on these problems.
Thanks very much, Owen. We have next question. Okay.
Sorry, and also the person asking the question get a mic.
Okay, we have a mic here. We have next question.
What are your plans to increase the budget for building public housing in Dundalk?
We can't increase the budget, and this is the difficulty that local government has in Ireland. It's a central government function to increase the budget, and the local government budget has not been increased in Louth since 2014 as a whole. John mentioned about CPOs, which, yes, we are the leading county, but we must provide match funding from central. Central government provides 50%, and then we must provide 50%, which is having an impact actually on our maintenance budget for our existing council houses. So it's kind of, you're between the local authority and public representatives are between a rock and a hard place. Because I know I'm not the only one that are making representations for house building, for CPO houses, vacant houses to be turned around quickly. They're known in the business as voids, local authority houses are voids, and there's certain, it's convoluted. There's about 3 different funding pots that you can obtain, and I'm not going to even try and explain it because I can't even understand it half the time myself. So I am in favour of actually local government being exactly what that is local government, and taking control, because now that's a separate issue. But in short, in your answer, we can't increase funding. We can try and lobby to get more funding. We can try and say that we don't have, to change within the system. So to
Do you plan to lobby?
we do it all the time. We do it all the time. I lobby my TDs, my senators. I'm sure I'm not the only local public representative. We have regular meetings with them. We try and look at engaging with approved housing bodies to see what can be done. But I don't believe that's a solution, approved housing bodies long term. I think that's a short term solution, because really what we need to do is our local authorities to be building local houses again to ensure that we have social housing. That's in short.
Thanks, Simon. What do you want to take it?
Yeah, this is the frustration for me as a new candidate, is exactly as Emma just says, is that the very little that you seem to be able to do at national level or at a local level without the approval of some national body. I will very much lobby anybody who will listen to me in terms of housing. Housing is something for me that it is a fundamental right that you have a home, as far as I'm concerned. Everyone should have the right to a roof over their heads, with certain, criteria we can put in place to ensure that that's an appropriate home for everyone, but everyone in my view has a right to a home. And if that takes whatever budget is necessary, that budget should be being made available. And just, since it's been touched on, this idea of central government, we need to decentralise these decisions back down to a local level. They need to be made at a local level, because someone in Dublin doesn't have a clue what's going on in Kerry, never mind Dundalk. These decisions really need to be made by people on the ground who know what they can do to see. As I've said already, you've got the vacant sites outside. We see it every day. Someone living and working in Dublin is not going to see that. It's just another picture, it's another map, point on a map. They need to be made at local level, and the funds need to be made available for us to do that.
Thanks, Owen. John?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at this year, we spent 2.3 billion already. So, ask the question. Sorry. Yeah, we spent 2.3 billion on housing, on financing has gone towards housing this year. So we're spending the most amount of money in the last 10 years ever on housing at the minute. One of the biggest problems that I think, and if you look around it, there's housing, just there for last year in 2017, there was 600 houses in County Louth built. This year alone, there's 250 houses being built. There's more houses coming on stream. But for me, one of the biggest problems that we have with regards to housing is planning. The planning in County Louth is absolutely crazy. So I'll give you one example. We talked about this there recently. There's only one site in Kent. There's one site in Dundalk, and it's within the one, let's call it the first region, which is Dundalk Town. It's a greenfield site, and it's up on Mount Avenue. And until that's built up, you can't move into building sites in point 2, which is kind of outside Dundalk. Do you know what I mean? So say Blackrock, Hagerstown and all that. So the biggest problem we have, it's actually slowing down developers. It's slowing people coming in who want to build houses and actually get housing supply there. You know, so that's my kind of point about that. The other question you said about lobbying, yeah. So I'm obviously... Yeah, the other thing about it, yeah, but every time any developer comes in, they're also building a certain percentage is going to public housing as well. And another problem that we've had with public housing is 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there was the staff and the know-how and the logic within county councils and local authorities about how to build houses. And local authorities were going off and building houses left, right and centre. All of that knowledge, all of that expertise is now gone. It was absolutely decimated over the last 10 or 15 years in local authorities. And I think Councillor Coffey will agree with me. It's the one thing that one of our colleagues, Councillor Peter Savage, says regularly, that all of that expertise and ability is taken away from local authorities. And it's us guys, and Owen's absolutely right, it's us guys who know what the issues are, whether it's Kerry, Louth, Longford or Wicklow. And the last point I wanted to make about that is when we talk about funding for local government, and it is so, like, we have an option every year to either increase or decrease property tax. If we were to increase the property tax last year by about 10%, that would have taken about €1.5 million, I think that's what it was last year. And that would have been a couple of cents on top of property tax for individual house owners allowed. Other political parties wanted to reduce that by 15%. That's taken 1.5 million out of the budget. You know, if we do that, we've absolutely no ability to try and do the type of stuff that you're talking about there.
Thanks, John. Next question.
I'd say this one is more of a practical question from the audience, and the question is, until someone gets listed on the housing list, what other financial help is there for people? And I think that's tackling a huge problem that we hear every day, right? That people who don't necessarily qualify or don't have the necessary document, it's a very long, drawn-out process to get on this list. People fall off this list continuously, and the rents we know have been risen about 90% in County Louth in the past 5 years. So a lot of families are struggling to maintain these rising rents and would be in need of supports to pay these rents. So what other help do you think people could get until they could get on this list? And could there be a process put in place to get this process shortened to get people on the list?
Yeah, I'll just go because I have the mic on my phone. So there's little or no supports before you get on the list, but it will only take you about 4 weeks max to get on the list. Like, getting on the housing list now is extremely quick. Like, no, it really is. Like, it's changed now because I've dealt with it myself. I have so many people who come to me and I'm saying, right, we can get your housing application fast-tracked, we can get your HAP fast-tracked. It's all done extremely quickly now in the council. But I remember 2 or 3 years ago, it was taking 12, 13, 14 weeks to process a housing application. But that is not the case now today in Louth County Council. So you can have, providing you have all your information in, and there is a lot of information required in a housing application, but providing you have all of that in and it's all correct at the start, your application can be dealt with extremely quickly. Like, the housing staff in Louth County Council are exceptionally good. And the best thing about that is, at the same time while your application is being processed, they can start processing your HAP application as well. Previously, what you had to do is you had to wait the 12 weeks to get on the housing list, and then you had to apply for HAP. So they're doing it all hand in hand in conjunction now. So I think those supports certainly are there, and that they're done and I feel that they're done in a pretty quick time, and that's from my own experience of taking constituents into Louth County Council and getting on the housing list.
It is quick if you have all the paperwork, but if say you don't have a permanent address, say you don't have ID, a photo ID, say you can't read, can't write. Unfortunately, the way the system, the current modern era is going, is that it's all very streamlined. It's not taken into account, I suppose, and I'm going to use this term, and it's maybe not the politically correct term, the marginalised people in our society. But also, it's quite stressful. Most people don't deal with paperwork on a daily basis. Most people don't know that they have to get, vouching, supporting documentation. It's quite stressful to, going into a bank looking for, the expense of actually looking for bank statements as well these days. And, in some instances it's getting better. And in some instances, some local authorities don't accept internet print-offs or banking statements or, bills, etc. that they wanted stamped. So all of that takes a delay. But if you have the paperwork, it does take about 4 weeks for the HAP applications. I don't believe that HAP is you mentioned about increase in rents. I don't believe that the HAP system works. I think it's having a detrimental impact on our private rental sector, and I don't believe our private rental sector is the solution to solving our housing crisis. And I'm talking about the housing crisis. I'm talking about people who don't have permanent homes. So I hope that it's not going to answer the question, but it's just my contribution in respect of it.
Thanks, Emma. Do you want to come in there, everyone?
Yeah. So 4 weeks is like, from the outside looking in, it seems like plenty of time to get an application through. If you just had a letter from your landlord evicting you, 4 weeks comes around like that. I'm speaking from experience. I had a landlord try to throw me out in 2 weeks, just before Christmas, because Airbnb was making her more money. 4 weeks isn't. You should be getting these. I mean, to me, it's crazy that this can't be done. The turnaround time can't be done in a couple of hours. It can be done online if it's necessary. If there needs to be facilities put in place for people to be shown how to do these things online, then we need to put them facilities in place. This idea of dealing with, it's a bit of a tangent of mine, but the amount of paperwork that's involved with dealing with social welfare with HAP, all of these governmental bodies, is ridiculous. You send in the same form several times. Sometimes you get told a week later that they've lost it. Can you send it in again? It's not acceptable in this day and age when we can do these things much, much quicker online. It needs to be done. Again, it doesn't answer directly the question, because what is there until you get on the housing list? Look, it's a frustration to me. It is really frustrating to me that this day and age there are people who are literally in this town, landlords treating houses as though, you know what, I can make my money back now, I'll sell it. It doesn't matter who's living in it. That shouldn't be allowed. I do think that there should be some sort of a stay on eviction in terms of if a landlord wants to put you out in the rental market. They should not be allowed to sell that property with you in it. If you choose to leave, that's your business. If you want to take on a new landlord, that's your business. But this goes back to what I said earlier on in terms of everybody deserving a home. Everyone does deserve a home. And regardless of what landlords like to think about their property, that is their property, but it's also someone's home. And we need to respect that. Now, there's constitutional issues in terms of the sanctity of private property, but why are we putting private property ahead of people in this day and age? I do not understand that.
So, have we one other quick question on housing before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, one last question. Why isn't Dundalk a rent pressure zone?
Who wants to take that?
God only knows. Why isn't the whole country a rent pressure zone at this point in time? The whole country is ridiculous when it comes to rents. It's ridiculous. Before I made this, I'm working in Dublin 2 years. I couldn't afford. Okay, I'm a postgraduate scholar. Okay, I make a reasonable amount of money compared to what I was on before, and it's 300 quid a week. And yet, DCU, there's nowhere within any. Dundalk is the closest place I can afford to live. You know, not because of my choice, but it's just simply because of the rents. You know, there is a massive problem. This entire country is a rent pressure zone. It's broken. We need to fix it before we start talking about, well, this area needs more help, this area needs more help. Let's fix the whole thing.
Rent pressure zones, they're not going to work, in my opinion. And I think we really need to look at our European, I suppose, counterparts. And in particular, I've looked at Germany and the rental, because they are a rental society, and rent certainty. And there's certain clauses that they have there that, a landlord can't increase the rent no more than 10% over the average rent over the last 4 years. If there's any improvements made to the property, the tenant can't be evicted, but they must contribute 11% of the total improvements if it's of benefit to them in the property long term. I think those are the type of things we need to look at. I think rent pressure zones, for the simple reason, cause an adverse effect on the widespread areas. We're not a rent pressure zone, but our rents have increased as a result of, I suppose, landlords on the eve of a rent pressure zone being coming in have hiked up their rents, and hence we have the spillage, for want of a better word, as Owen has said, the commute coming out, so which is having an impact then locally on people who are living within the areas. So I don't think they work. I think we need to be looking at rent certainty long term.
Thanks, Simon.
I actually have the specific reason why it wasn't. I just googled there quickly, and I saw that my own colleague, Minister Owen Murphy, had said. So I'm just going to quote from this, if that's all right. He was asked a parliamentary question in the Dáil last week, and he pointed out that while the system has been used to curb rental increases in other areas, Minister Murphy said that Dundalk did not currently meet the criteria to be included as a rent pressure zone. He pointed out that in order to be included as an area's annual rate of inflation must have been 7% or more in 4 of the last 6 quarters, or the average rent must be above the national average rent, which stands at €1,100 in the last RTB rent index report. So I can't answer any. That's the absolute factual reason as to why Dundalk doesn't fall under the category for a rent pressure zone compared to Drogheda. However, that still doesn't make it right as such. And 2 different people said it to me last night when I was canvassing about how Drogheda is a rent pressure zone and Dundalk isn't, and yet we're only 20 minutes up the road. You know, so I really would be pushing myself to say that Dundalk and other parts of County Louth should be included in that rent pressure zone.
Thanks, John. Okay, we hopefully will have some time at the end maybe for some quick fire questions if you want to come back on the topic of housing. We're going to move on now to health services. And have we a question on health services?
We do, and this is a very painful question to read actually. It's coming from the audience, and I think we've all read that story in the newspapers. It is concerning the lack of mental health facilities in the county and in the primary care centres here. And I just read it and we'll give the question to you. Recently, a person I know took his own life after being turned away from mental health services 3 times, despite presenting as suicidal. What are you going to do to help ensure that that doesn't happen again? Currently, just 1 psychologist oversees the whole North East. Do you think this is right?
Emma?
Sure, no, it's not right. Our mental health services have been seriously underfunded for best part of generations. I'm not even going to quote how many years. It seems to be the lower end. We are understaffed. I think in the last budget there has been specifically 55 million allocated to staff recruitment nationally, which is not going to go a long way, but it's a start of investment to try and recruit our staff within the mental health services. We are way below, and it's an epidemic, and hence why we have darkness into light, and are so sad. Charity organisations that are going to. We can't. No, I'm not saying we can. I'm saying to you that unfortunately it's those type of organisations that have been set up to try and breach the vacuum because people are being turned away like that poor, unfortunate man. And the simple answer is, what am I going to do? All I can do as a public representative is what I have done in the past. I can consistently raise the fact that we are underfunded, consistently raise the fact that our CAM service is non-existent in our county, consistently raise the fact that we need more funds. As a local representative, that's all I can do to lobby our Dáil representatives that this needs to be done more. I have to say that the 55 million was actually signed specifically on foot of Fianna Fáil's lobbying under the Confidence and Supply. I'm not looking for a badge of honour, I'm simply stating that it's a start, that finally specific funding has been allocated to mental health. A long way off, and as I say, in excess of 20 years we have not invested. We need to start stepping up from the ground up.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, I'd echo an awful lot of what Emma has said. I will work very hard to lobby for these. It goes back place. If you break your leg, go to a hospital, you get bandaged up, and yet, where is it for our mental health and where is it for our mental well-being? Where are the services? They need to be put in place. They're just as important. We're learning now, even every day as we go on, that the interconnections between the two, physical and mental well-being, are so tightly intertwined that they both impact on one another. It is not acceptable that a county like Louth has virtually no dedicated services in mental health. It's unacceptable. I've lost several friends to suicide in the last 5 years. I know exactly the lack of help that there is there for anyone, including people who are impacted by it. And it just needs to be put in place very, very quickly. And again, it cannot rely on the charity sector. There's an over-reliance, in my view, on the charity sector to fill many voids in this nation. It's not acceptable. It should be provided for by the state.
Thanks, Alan. John?
Cheers, thank you. Just a couple of things. Like we've had a significant budget for mental health alone in 2019, and that's nearly €1 billion in 2019 alone. So most of that has ever been spent on providing mental health services. We've also seen the recruitment of 1,500 people into mental health services in the last 18 months to 2 years. What we really need to do is to make sure early intervention happens as soon as possible, so that people get that early intervention before they require any type of hospital care. And Minister Jim Daly is our Minister of State and Department of Health. And I hadn't been in Dundalk a couple of months ago, and what Jim said, what he's doing at the minute is to have a one-door approach to mental health in Ireland, where you walk in that one door and all the services are there for you straight away, that you're appointed by one individual to service A, B, C, D, E, F, or G. At the minute, you have to go in, let's say, one door for A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And you could be an individual with 2 or 3 different, mental health issues, or 2 or 3 different types of services you need to access. And that makes the system, it's the cumberness of the system that makes it so difficult at the moment, that we're not getting that type of early intervention that we need. So I would very much support Minister Daly's work that he's doing to have a one-door, open approach where anyone with any type of an issue can walk in and straight away they have the support that they need, and they're not fighting that kind of bureaucracy or kind of looking around to see what supports do I actually need.
Yeah, in looking at what my role as a moderator is, one of them is like we should stick to the topic that the question is about, and I think we're straying into the national and away from the local. The question that was asked there was very, very much something that deals with here, and the bigger picture is grand, but what can we do now, I think, was one of the main focuses, and we just urge that we maybe keep the focus on what the issues are. Have we a next question on health?
How do you plan to improve the lack of services in our primary care centres? There's no dentist for people with special needs for 6 months. Waiting lists for occupational therapy, speech therapies are months or years long.
You have a microphone if you want it.
Whether I want it or not, I suppose I better ask. In short, again, this comes back, and I feel like I'm a broken record here, but local authority has no impact on Louth in health forms that have no impact on actual services within our county. They are discussion. They are submitting reports again to central government. And if you're asking me what I can do as a local representative, I can't do anything other than to discuss it or to pass on to my representative, my party representative, who is a member of that health forum. I'm pleased to say I am that member of that health forum. It is something that I have raised in that forum. But that's, as a local representative, that was a power that was taken off us. And it's as you say, waiting lists have accumulated for dentists, etc. When we had a health board, we had waiting lists, but they weren't to the extent they are now.
Thanks, Alan. Owen?
So for the Green Party, it's part of the reason why I'm a member is that there's a strong belief in the personal responsibility in healthcare in terms of making sure that you can look after yourself. Primary healthcare centres are a fundamental part of that. I believe in them strongly as well. I don't think that a non-emergency case should be clogging up emergency departments and hospitals. Stuff that can be treated in primary healthcare should be treated in primary healthcare. And to that end, as Emma has alluded to, we need to decentralise the HSE. It never really should have called it an experiment. We now know it didn't work. We need to decentralise these services back, whether that be on a regional level or on a county by county level. I think is open to debate, but I definitely think that they need to be decentralised, and again the decisions need to be made at a local level where people know what services they're getting themselves and can make a decision on how to best go and improve them.
Thanks, Eoin.
Yeah, apologies with the earlier question. It's hard not to answer in a national context when a lot of the questions are nationally based questions, you know. So apologies about that. And again, this is more of a nationally based question, I suppose, and it's about primary healthcare centres. And
my understanding is the question is about primary health services in County Louth.
Yeah, and so what we want to do is try and get primary healthcare centres to County Louth, and it's about getting care quicker to your local area that you have it that way, you know. But again, as local councillors, it's something that we have absolutely no ability to influence whatsoever. And I know that sounds a bit harsh, you know, but that's the God's honest truth about it. If I become a member of the Dáil in the next 6 months, 8 months, or a year, whenever it comes along, they are definitely issues that I can start talking about with the platform I have. But as local councillors, we don't have that type of influence, unfortunately.
Thanks, John. Have we another question?
No more questions on that topic.
Okay. Do you want to take a short break or we keep going?
Just before we do, does anyone have any more questions?
On health.
On health or housing or the other two areas or sustainability and
Yes, sorry.
The problems being presented here, athletes keep kicking upstairs to central government. Whatever the other parties are in, central government seems to be obfuscating on these issues all the time, and it sounds like you lovely people are in the wrong party.
There's only 2 TDs from the Green Party.
You're off the hook.
Well, sorry. What do you mean? Why are we apart from apart?
Why are you campaigning? Why are you running for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael?
I'm running for Fianna Fáil. You're talking about an ethos, but if you look, questions were asked from a local level, and that's the system that we have in our local government, in our government acts. Sorry, can I ask the question? Can I answer the question that you asked?
Yeah,
so, in regard to we're kicking it up the flow, up the down the road or up the road, so to speak, that's the reality. That's what we have. The abolition of the town councils, local and county councils, the total redrawing of it. That's one of the issues. You know, one of the things that I'm campaigning is that we must have a local government powers. We don't have them. It's hugely frustrating for me in the last 3 years that the limited powers that we have. I mean, ultimately, county councillors have the responsibility of either increasing, decreasing local property tax or keeping it the same. We have a power in regards to budgetary measures every year. Do we pass the budget? Can we amend the budget or otherwise? And we then, you know, these are, and we have the power of bylaws. We also have the power of raising issues from a local point to try and get them across. That's the public matter. But in regards to our role as county councillors, I think I've indicated, we are community people. People come to us and we try to help them, be it a housing issue, be it mental health issues. We mightn't have the power as councillors, but what we tend to do is to try and be the networker and try and get people services and try and get people to resolve those issues. It is not a perfect system, and it's not I hope you don't think it's something that we're trying to be backdoor about it. That's the system we have. Now, I know personally, and I know from Councillor McGahon, we do lobby our TDs. I am extremely angry at the accelerated rebuilding pact at the moment that any residential development over 100 units is now gone up to on board Planola. It is now taken out of our county councils, our planners, our county councillors. That's another stripping of our powers in local government. That the expertise that we have on the ground are nearly sidelined. And the erosion of local government in this country is absolutely staggering. When you look at mainland Europe and see how local government is run, and see that you can get your driving licence, and you can get your medical card sorted here, and that there is an input on primary care services and local health services on the ground in local towns and local government. That's what we need to get back to. That's what we done in the 40s, 50s and 60s. And there was bad press, and politicians were open to abuse of it. But it is not a perfect society. You are here to look to elect local voices and local representatives. We can only do the job within the system that we have. So if we want to change it, it is up to us to lobby, but it's up to you to talk to your TDs, your national TDs, who are going into Dáil Éireann, who are passing votes, who are bringing motions, who are bringing legislation, and instead of eroding local government, should be ensuring that it's enforced, that we can start building our town from the grounds up. Because that's what's wrong. We've eroded each and every county council, that our powers, be it in health, be it in education, be it on social issues, are gone. And what I feel we are at times is just a mouthpiece, which you seem to be doing very well at the moment.
Thanks very much, Emma. Does anyone else want to come in on that?
I would just that's it. You know, I can't disagree with any of that. But as citizens, as voters, what are we meant to do when most of the control, most of the effects of government, of policy, seems to be coming from central government? And one of the resources that we have is our vote, obviously, and it seems that this might be an opportune moment to punish Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael.
But that's your choice. That's your choice. That's your democratic right. I disagree with you. I believe in Fianna Fáil. I believe it's a party for all. I believe it's a broad church. I believe it can have, I'm a centre-left politician. I know I am. But there's also, no, we're not. And and this is a national issue, so if we're going to start on a national I can get into that. But I mean, you know, we're not in government. But if you want me to answer that, I can answer it. But
You're part of the confidence and supply.
We're part of confidence and supply. We're not in government. So
Yeah, I think in fairness we have to point out that between the two Dundalk areas there are a total of 20 candidates. We have 3 of them who have volunteered to be here. And I'll do too, to answer questions on local issues that are raised here locally. And in fairness, we will try to do that. We move on to the next issue, which is sustainability. Have we questions on that?
We have questions.
Before you do that, maybe you would, just for my sake, if no one else's, tell me, what do you mean by sustainability?
I was about to try that, John. Just give me a second. Okay. So the issue on sustainability, I think everybody read the news reports about the climate change issues, and it has been in a state of hopefully anxiety and panic at this stage. But as a local group, we have a working group that is working on sustainability issues in the community. Right, so we asked you to pose questions that affect local sustainability goals. How are you going to support them? And the first question on that would be a very practical one from the audience here. How will the ban on fossil fuels be enacted? People are still buying it even though it is being banned. My neighbours are still using banned fuel.
I assume we're talking about smoky coal, not fossil fuels.
I think it is probably smoky coal we're talking about.
Well, the first thing I know, something that Mark Deary's worked hard on is getting the EPA to monitor air conditions in County Louth and Dundalk in particular. We have an air quality monitoring station in Dundalk. It's possibly not sited in the best location. But these are things that, Mark worked heavily to get. This can be done at a local level. we can monitor the air conditions using stations such as this through the EPA. We need to also look at the decision-making process behind a person using smoky coal, because as I found on the doors, going door to door, a few people complained to me about a particular house burning smoky coal and other materials on a regular basis. When I knocked on that door, the man could bring me into his house quick enough to tell me all of his problems. The man was literally about to be evicted from his house that wasn't suitable for human habitation. The last thing that man was worrying about was the type of fuel that he was burning. And I put my hand up as a Green Party candidate and say, this is the issue that the Green Party needs to now look at, is that people are making the decision to burn things like smoky coal, particularly for financial reasons. It's cheaper. We need to be aware of that.
Can I just add a bit onto that?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll just hand the microphone over, if that's all right.
Again, it comes into enforceability. The Environmental Protection Agency enforces prosecution for air pollution, etc. I'm probably and it is grossly understaffed and underfunded. And if we had a local, I suppose, department within the local authority that could enforce the actual air pollution acts, I think it would go a long way. In regards to, air monitoring, we do have air monitoring systems within the county, and again, he's sitting at the back, but it was an awful lot to do with Councillor Daly at the back for raising these issues consistently. But we can gather all the data we want, but as I say, we can have all the legislation we want, but unless it's enforced, nothing is going to change. I think we actually need to look at our neighbours in Scotland who have changed dramatically, reduced their carbon footprint and fossil fuels intake, and actually hit their carbon reduction 54% by 2015 as opposed to 2020, which was majorly impacted because of the reduction of carbon footprint and I suppose fossil fuels. And the one thing that they actually done was use the local authorities as education, the libraries, forums such as this, notices, and going into the schools, talking to the parents. It's a very simple mechanism, but it's something I think we could use now practically, and it is something that I would have raised. We actually have a really good energy efficiency department within Louth County Council, and I don't think it's been maximised enough. It is actually, we really have somebody who is way beyond, and we've got a lot of grant aid and actually investment over the last number of years because of that actual department. So I think it's something that we could look at and expand on from a practical level.
Thanks, Emma. John?
Yeah, to answer your question directly, it is enforcement. It is an enforcement issue, so that's when it comes along to the EPA or wherever. It is an enforcement issue that you need to get prosecutions out of, and that's the only way you can stop people doing that. And to touch on the point that Emma made, on the County Council, we actually have an all-County Council climate plan strategy. And I can't tell you anything about it because when I got it, I gave it straight to Councillor Daly. And I didn't get a chance to read it properly with the one copy that I had. But the Council are doing some great strides with making the Council itself as energy sustainable and as efficient as possible.
Councillor Daly, would you please give that back to John? It's his. We have someone who wants to make a related comment to this issue.
The person that asked this question was concerned that she had a small child in the house and the neighbour was burning the banned fuel. The comment this person made was, how can it be enforced if people are already buying it? So can something be done about the people selling this fuel rather than the people buying it? Because as Eoin has pointed out, the person he was talking to had bigger problems than the fuel they were burning. So could we target the people that are selling it rather than the people that are buying it if this is becoming an issue?
Anyone want to comment on that?
I think we need to look at why people are still burning coal. Sorry, excuse me. Why are people still burning coal in this day and age? If this is in particular a council house we're looking at, then we should be looking at why is that still using a coal burning. It's one of the most inefficient ways to heat your house. Why isn't it gas? Why isn't it oil? Why isn't it renewable?
Yeah, there could be an rental property that doesn't
If it's a private rental, yeah, why do we need to put the legislation in place that says landlords need to provide a minimum standard of the BER ratings in here? Now, you could argue some places, in some cases, they're doing a good job. They're the best of what we have. If we need to legislate to say that a rental property should meet a minimum BER rating, then that's what we need to aim for. I think that's an achievable goal that we can all do. Certainly think the council should be aiming for that in terms of its properties.
Thanks, Eoin.
Can I just highlight, is your official stance on this, John, that you want to prosecute people using banned fuels?
You know, and I think the point that you've made there is actually to the people who are supplying it as well.
So you've changed your opinion on that?
I think it has to be both ways. You know, if you cut out the person supplying it, then you don't have to prosecute anyone who's burned.
And also with seeing then that home heating fuel and housing are intrinsically linked.
I think
So,
fuel
yeah.
poverty.
Sorry, can we use microphones, please?
I actually think fuel poverty is linked to housing, and that's the wider issue. And you know, people want, they're not going to sit in a cold home, or they're not going to have their children sitting in cold homes. And if they're on limited income, they're going to buy what they can to meet their needs on the money that they're on. So that's why I'm saying is it's not just enforcement, it's also encouragement, and it's also choice. And those are the issues that not just central government but local authorities need to be encouraging people, citizens, and educating them.
Do you want to come in on that issue, John? Okay. Next question on sustainability.
Sure. Wicklow County Council declared a climate emergency. Would you support Louth County Council declaring a climate emergency?
Well, I can actually tell you that the Green Party are bringing a motion at the last Louth County Council meeting for this current set of councillors, which I'm sure is going to get cross-party support, but I can tell you personally, yes, I would be.
Yeah, I would say it would be.
I've publicly said that.
That was a quick answer. Have we another question on sustainability?
What is your view on the sustainability of local natural environments and the restoration of what has already been damaged?
Well, one of the basic things I think are basic initiatives that we should do is to plant more trees. I know it sounds, you know, I don't know what you're going to say it is, but I mean, it's something that we need to concentrate on as local authorities. Tidy Towns are actually doing some of the initiatives on a small scale, but we need to roll it out. I think that's the first thing we need to do to restore. I think we also need to bring back when you used to have glass, you pay a deposit and bring it back. The recycling of certain plastics, glasses, I think they talked about that today, but I think it's something, it worked. I remember
A deposit scheme.
Yeah, deposit scheme, sorry, I couldn't think of it. But I remember many years ago when I was a child that it was in place and it worked, and it should be back again. It worked before. I think schools, primary schools, are the place where this is actually, you know, what we can do to limit our damages. And actually, I can say on the doors, climate damage and climate recovery is very little, not spoken about to me, probably to the Green Party, but not spoken to me as a Fianna Fáil candidate. But I can tell you where it's discussed, which is in the schools. Because for the last 12 months I've gone to secondary schools, and it is the first topic that is discussed. So we as public representatives, and ye all out, have a responsibility to that generation that we have to see if these initiatives can be rolled out. But I think the deposit scheme and the trees would be two of the initiatives that local authorities could basically implement in a short space of time with, you know, a huge impact long term.
Thanks, Anna. John?
Yeah, it's a pretty difficult question. I'll be honest with you. So when you're talking about, sorry, I did write it down, you said about more sustainability for the local environment as such.
And then basically the restoration of damage.
Yeah, I don't know. To be perfectly honest with you, I could try and give you a bluff answer, but I'm being totally honest. My knowledge of it isn't up to speed. and I can't give you a straight enough answer with it, so I don't want to try and bluff around the park with you on that.
Thanks, John.
I echo a lot of what Emma has said. Glass deposit schemes are great. We need to bring them back. There's a little bit of pushback from certain industrial lobby groups to say that recycling glass bottles and bringing deposit schemes would be economically viable in Ireland. Don't agree with it. I've seen in my engineering, I've been to conferences where I've seen the success of these projects all across Europe and East Europe and Eastern European countries. I also think, again, forestry is another one. We need to be promoting the growth of native species, though specifically native species. I think farmers in particular have a big role to play. I think we can't neglect their role in a wider context of combating climate change. I just had a word with one yesterday on the door who, this idea that the Green Party, for example, are against people growing cattle, it's not true. In fact, my opinion is that Irish farmers are going to have a hell of a role to play in the next 50 to 100 years of combating climate change. We are reaching the point where we can no longer expect to import everything from far abroad countries, and we're going to rely on local farmers, local businesses to supply our needs very locally. This is part of the problem. It's the expectation that I can walk to Tesco's and I can eat a banana that was flown halfway across the world. That's where we as individuals need to actually temper our own expectations in the coming years. But yeah, that's on a local level. I certainly think that that's 3 areas.
So you're saying, Eoin, that you've solved the problem how an Irish farmer can produce an Irish steak without any methane gas?
No. But if you take it, I mean, for example, where do we import the rest of our beef from if we don't take it from here? You've got Brazil shipping it from half a world away.
No, I know the point.
Yeah, sorry.
It was a joke.
I assume everybody knows these things.
Have we another question on sustainability? We move on.
I could have one.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Use the microphone. As you might hear from my accent, I'm not Irish born and bred. I come from Germany.
That's good.
That has been mentioned many times here. But what I don't get when we talk about all these issues, renaturation, zero waste, whatever. We look at Finland, we look at Germany, we look at France, Norway, name it, Scandinavian countries. And all the local authorities there have managed to come up with their own place. Finland, you can watch it online, has a wonderful little city who has just declared themselves zero waste, and it's working. So they have tackled these things on a local level instead of just waiting for some unknown government in Dublin to raise these issues. So my question as a foreigner is always like, why is this not possible in Ireland? Every time I come up with a topic to one of you guys, it's like, oh, it's Dublin, right? Instead of saying, why can we not say Dundalk will be the next zero waste community in this country? And we're going to try to do that. We're going to put up these bins. We're going to start a deposit scheme, even on our own, if necessary. Bottle banks, like really. Yesterday, one of the local shops, I'm not mentioning the name, put out an initiative of refilling containers in their shop. So I can go there and get my washing detergent refilled, all these kind of things. And I'm sure you as councillors could get grants for these kind of things. So my question would be, will you do that? And will you support local community groups who will definitely lobby for this kind of thing?
Thanks. This, as I've said earlier on this evening, this particular problem is only going to be solved by incremental changes at a local level. It needs the community to do it. And I do firmly believe, I've said it before tonight, Dundalk and North Louth, County Louth in general, can be a shining light. This question that keeps coming up, Emma mentioned earlier about getting it on the doors as a Green Party candidate, about the solutions that need to be brought in for climate change. It is true, you do get an awful lot of it. And one of the big questions is that, what can Ireland do? Ireland can be the shining light to other countries. It's something that we can do in County Louth. We have the resources, we have, I was just talking this morning, DKIT is about has huge potential there to grow renewable technologies. We have the community buy-in in County Louth to try and bring these technologies out into the community to see the rewards, to reap the rewards. I firmly am 100% behind that in terms of schemes trying to get zero waste. Waste reduction is something I feel very passionate about. Glass, as you said earlier, the reason why this bringing return scheme is because glass is nearly 100% recyclable. We need to get away from this idea that we can buy a bottle of water and throw it away 30 seconds after finishing it. It's not sustainable. Coming back to the theme.
Okay, so, John?
So actually, like with regards specifically to your question, like local authorities can be really a shining, a lead authority on this, and they can really set the example. And one way they can do that is through the Climate Action Fund. So 27 local authorities in the country applied through the Climate Action Fund, and I think the figure was about 17.5 million. And they used that to replace 325,000 LED lights to more high efficiency public lighting, public lantern lighting. Sorry, I'm getting it wrong. But there is a perfect example of a funding stream that local authorities can apply for and apply to, and I have absolutely no doubt that they couldn't apply for any type of a project. You know, you mentioned a couple there like bottle schemes. Like that's what that kind of remit falls under, and that's a very good example of how local authorities can really set an example.
Just to touch on what John said, he mentioned funding. That's the drawback for local authorities, is the funding. We have great ideas, councillors, in regards to recycling or environmental schemes, shall we say, or climate, renewable schemes, but it's funding. Now, you mentioned, you took my thunder, you mentioned about the LED lights. They're actually, county-wide, it's going to take 5 years to change the street lighting or public lighting from the current old system to climate or energy efficient LED lights, which is one initiative that, in fact, Louth County Council, after 3 years, got the funding, and it's been rolled out from last year, and it's on a 5-year programme at the moment. So that is the issue. But in regard to local businesses, yes, very much encouraging of it, and there is leader funding, which is a state body that many local businesses for green initiatives can actually apply for.
Thank you. We are all right on sustainability now, we move on. Last topic, community welfare. We got a first question on community welfare.
What is community welfare?
Yeah, do you want to give a definition of community welfare?
I'll give a definition of community welfare. What we summarised under community welfare is actually something a lot of you guys brought back to us. We hear this on the doors. It sums up things like accessibility for people in our community who are not able-bodied. It sums up the impact of drug gangs. We heard from a councillor that's not present today on local communities. A lot of elderly people don't feel safe in their houses anymore, all these kind of things. So it's a very broad subject, so bear with us, but we just thought we need some sort of topic for that. So the first question I would give to Sorka.
Do you have any plans to make footpaths more accessible for people with special needs, particularly the areas in bad condition?
Yeah. So, as a municipal district, we get a certain allocation of funding each year. And about, was it 3 years ago, Mark? 4 years ago, it was Councillor May of Europe proposed that we would put that money towards making footpaths more disabled friendly, shall we say. However, the biggest problem with that was that the money we had, I think it was about 65,000 euros, the money we had, and that was only the money each municipal district gets, do you know what I mean? The money we had that the council, the work wasn't really done well whatsoever. Like, it was really bad, to be polite about it, right? And when this was raised by different councillors, the response coming back from the council was, well, when it's only a certain amount of money like that, there's only so much work that you can do you know what I mean? Which was a very, very poor response. But what I always say to the council, and it's kind of slightly touched on this, is if you look at the very poor condition of footpaths everywhere, like, they're not only are they bad for, terrible to try and use for people with disabilities, they're terrible for anyone to try and use. And like I've always said to the council, imagine the amount of money that Louth County Council would save if they actually just fix their footpaths. you know, and made it more accessible. So it is something we really have to try and work on to make it much more accessible than it is now.
Could I ask a supplementary question just on that point? 65,000 is all they got?
No, it's, so sorry, I should have explained better. The €65,000, was it 65,000 mark at the time, or was it 70? 65. It is an amount of money that is given to each municipal district in the country, and it's up to you to decide what it's a discretionary spend. So
the question I have is, how much money was paid out in claims made on people injuring themselves?
I don't know, but it's a lot more.
It's an interesting question. I would think it's an awful lot more than that.
So in terms of the footpath condition, it's terrible. I've only really become aware of it actually, I'll be honest, in council, sorry. But I think it comes back to another issue that I know again Dundalk For Change has raised, and I feel very strongly about, is one of the biggest problems to quality of footpaths is actually illegal parking, essentially. You deteriorate the quality of the footpath by mounting it with your car. So one of the things, and again, it comes back to, first off, the car is blocking the footpath. Secondly, it's the damage in the footpath as well, so it's going to ruin the quality for everyone. So this is something that I feel very strongly about. We have laws, we have bylaws in place to enforce parking. They need to be properly enforced, and I will work very strongly to do that. In both cases, maintain the state of the footpaths, not as they are, hopefully improve them. And also to work towards trying to keep our footpaths clear and traffic lanes clear.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, it's an ongoing problem. There was an initiative actually that one of our colleagues, Maeve Lowe, brought about where Gardaí basically got on board in regards to a tech system of where a car was blocking a footpath or obstructing the footpath or in parking in disabled areas. Basically, there was a highlighter or photo campaign where there was certain areas where a person in a wheelchair trying to get through it was blocking. It's an ongoing matter, and we've adopted all of these policies of ensuring that our walkways and streetways are free accessibility to everybody, be it physically disabled or otherwise. But it's going to be an ongoing thing. We have apparently all compliant in regards to accessibility, but the problem is we don't maintain the footpaths to the required standard. And for instance, I'll give you an example. The Dublin Road footpath from Sexton's Pub to the Super Value complex on the old Dublin Road apparently is passed in our plans for wheelchair accessibility, but it's actually overgrown. The green embankments have overgrown, so really it's a maintenance issue as well as obviously improving degenerative footpaths.
I'm sorry, can I just elaborate on that, because I actually
just with regards to not even I would call it roadworks, but I'm trying to think of word, developments, I don't know, like laying lines, the builders coming in, mucking the place up basically, leaving the place in a state and then just going off. It's not just a deterioration of the footpaths, it's how are these people being regulated. I saw the specific one time walking down Legion Avenue, there was works happening there. Now this actually was the case, the whole entire footpath was completely cordoned off and there was no walkway. What if a blind person walked along? What would happen then? There was literally no walkway, and it was making you go out onto the road. Well, none of these works are actually being regulated. They're just been left to their own devices, and it's obviously cheap labour at the same time. As John pointed out, you're only paying 65 grand. So what's happening?
Correction on that. That was one project that the councillors decided to make their allocation available, which came to the total value of 65,000. Any contract that is tendered by the local authority is tendered through the national tendering programme. So to say it's cheap labour, that's not the case. There's requirements set by all public contracts that must be met by all tendering contractors. Sorry, but this has been streamlined. I just want to clarify that.
We move on to the next question then. Community welfare.
Sure, this question just comes back to enforcing, like keeping pathways accessible. Like we've had people tell us about how people who use wheelchairs are unable to go down a path because there's a car on it, and then when they bring it to the attention of the traffic warden, they don't do anything about it. Or so how do you actually ensure that these laws are enforced?
Well, I think I just mentioned about the campaign that was launched in the last couple of months, where it's actually proved successful in that it was a public awareness campaign, and the community wardens and the Gardaí actually got on board and issued fines in respect of it. In relation to contractors working they have to apply for a licence to the local authority in order to start those works, so be it broadband, be it Irish Water, be it any of those subcontractors that are on public roads, and there's certain terms and conditions attached to those licences. So, for instance, in that particular instance, they're not being met. But I know from my own experience of dealing with these things that when I've seen issues like that and I've reported them to the Louth County Council, they have dealt with it immediately, within days. And I'll give you an example where there was cement accidentally poured down a public drain on a main road that I discovered through a representation made by a lady who was adjacent to that. I reported it. They came back to me and in fairness to the County Council, they done a scope works and came back to me and said there's cement put down there. And they informed me what the likelihood of that. And within 3 days, the last contractor that was working on that area went back and had to remove that because as I say, there's terms and conditions attached to that licence. So, if there's issues and they're not, and there's that's a clear point that if somebody was causing injury there, they would have a claim because there's works going on. But the claim is not just against the council, the claim is against the contractor because the contractor has the licence. So it's the responsibility of the licence holder in regards to those type of works. And it's the responsibility of the Louth County Council that when it comes to their attention, that they're not adhering to that they will ensure that it's met.
John? Yeah, I can come with that. I'm kind of repeating the same stuff. I'll give you an example. Like take Ardesmond, for example, when Virgin Media Works came in, and then about 8 weeks or 9 weeks later, I think Irish Water came back in again and it just dug up the whole thing again. It was crazy. And that's, at the time we were saying, is that just a lack of joined up thinking between different organisations, or is there not really something in the council to say, well, so-and-so's coming in this week and so-and-so's this week, why don't you do it the same week? I don't have that answer for you. But a good example though, two things about it is, Virgin Media did a pretty terrible job in Ardesmond. And I'll just tell you what I did at the time. I went to Virgin Media, we took one of their main people out, we went around 2 or 3 walls that had been destroyed, cracks in walls, we went around various parts of footpaths, like drops coming out of houses when you're coming out in your car, that the car would just go straight down. And to be fair, once you engage with people, and I'm not saying engage with them the way I did, but they were able to come back out a week or 2 later and they were all sorted out. And there was 3 different people with 3 different walls, more or less were in a crack. They were all in place, And in my experience, whenever I've had issues with contractors, I either started works earlier, so if they're meant to start at 8 o'clock and they're in there at 6:30 starting it, and causing noise disruption, or where they're not doing up to speed. Whenever anyone has come to me about that, I get straight on with council, I get straight on with enforcement, and enforcement are out there like a shot. Do you know what I mean? They really are. But the difficult thing is, and I've said this at council meetings, it's very difficult for Louth County Council to go around and police every single contractor in the county at any one given day. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of the times they have to react to complaints, or people like yourself or me raising awareness to say this contractor is pulling a fast one here, and then they have to go out and investigate that.
Oh, do you want to come in there?
The 2 questions really, I'd link them together and say, again, it goes back to what John just said. We need to put the inspections in place there. In terms of the original question, parking, we need more wardens if it's the case that people are parking on footpaths and still getting away with it. I know the campaign's been started, but again, if we need to put inspectors in place to go out and inspect the work after it's been done, then why haven't we hired these inspectors to do that?
Another question?
Again, this could be just related to the previous point, but do you think, is it a case of there isn't enough place for people to park their cars? Is it a case that the cars are too concentrated in the centre of the town?
So first off, being a Green Party candidate?
It's only like obviously people should absolutely not be parking their cars on footpaths.
No.
But is it a case of there aren't? What is the real problem?
The first step I would say is that the public transport's not there for people to want to actually take the bus into work. The second problem then is when you take it to the next level, you go, where are the parking problems in town? They're all outside that region around the centre of town where the pay parking is in place. You get people taking up all the free spaces, and so very quickly the parking in town gets taken up. And then there's a little bit of the, sure, it'll be grand, I'm only running in the road, or I'm only running into the shop here, I'll stick the hazard lights of invisibility on, and away I'll run. It's not acceptable. And it's an individual thing, again, it comes back to that. We need to each individually, it comes back to an awful lot of the problems other councillors have raised in terms of like speeding in certain parts of McSweeney Street, Legion Avenue, out the Armagh Road. All of this is an individual problem. We can put in speed bumps, we can put, I'm sorry to take away from it, but again it comes back to a similar frame in that we can put in speed bumps every 5 yards if we want, but that's not solving any problem. The problem is with us as individuals, and it's an educational issue. We need to make people aware that someone may need to use that footpath wider than that much.
I would actually agree with Owen. It's a responsibility on the people. Driver responsibility. We all know the rules of the road. We all know we can't park on footpaths. In regards to parking, there's always going to be a pressure on parking in town. We don't have a high-rise car park in Dundalk. I know many years ago it was applied for and it was rejected through the planning process. I'm not saying that's a solution, because there's always going to be people who will do that. I'm only going into the shop for a couple of seconds.
I just want to see what the other side of that question would be. I was just curious because on social media I've often noticed people, on social media I've often noticed people, and this is just from my own observations, not my personal opinion necessarily. I've seen people complain about expensive parking on social media. I've seen this on the Democrat comments. I've just seen a lot of it. People are complaining Dundalk is too expensive to park. For example, RD has free parking. Here has free parking. How come we're paying so much for parking? Not saying that's anything to do with the footpath situation. I'd say this is probably a separate issue. But it's something I've personally seen people talk about. Whether it's logical or not, I don't know.
I think people will always give out about that, but the majority of people, I'm sure the majority of us in here, if they own a car, they know they have to pay for parking. I mean, bar RD, there's very few towns who have free parking. There's reduced cost parking car parks in Dundalk. There's one, I think, near the Long Walk, and there's one on the ramparts as well. I think it's €2 all day car park. I mean, you don't park on footpaths. Unless you're putting up posters.
Even so, you walk.
No, but I'm making
I'm a terror, because there's so many times I think I'm just nipping in somewhere and I don't get a and I don't pay for a parking ticket, and then I have a 40 quid fine on my window. I've probably paid more in parking fines in the last year. I live in Seatown, and parking is a massive issue in Seatown with local residents. It's so difficult, and the reason is because everyone who works in the town centre comes and parks in Seatown. Park in Chapel Street, park in Seatown, park in Happy Valley. And so many residents there are turning around to me and saying, John, what on earth can we do? Can we introduce pay parking? Like, pay parking is the only way I can get parked in my house between 9 in the morning and 6 o'clock at night. And to do that, then it's introducing bylaws. It's a different, and I'm right there in the middle of it, do you know what I mean? And it's Chapel Street as well, is a perfect example. There's one or two local businesses there in Chapel Street. No one can even put their hands to the barber shop. No one can even get into it. You know what I mean? Because they're parking along there.
Just wondering, is there an incentive to avoid that happening? What if it could be just a personal responsibility thing?
In fairness, I don't think the question was about parking, and we're straying off the topic of community welfare. It is a relevant issue. I just want to make the point that I'm actually quite disappointed tonight that we have 3 councillors, would-be councillors, 2 councillors and 1 candidate, who are so agreeable with one another all the time. It's pleasant and nice to see. Have we any other question on community welfare?
Maybe to end this
printed here in front of us, we can open the floor to...
I was just going to do that. Okay, that's the 4 topics that were debated. So if we want to do a quick fire round, it's 25 to 9, so we have about 20-25 minutes if people want to ask questions. It could be yes or no. I'm looking for yes or no answers. As I say, these 3 volunteers, guinea pigs, are here to win your vote, among other things, but also to answer your questions. So if anyone has anything that they'd like to ask, please do so. Yes, Mark.
It's okay, I'll speak loud, you're fine. Given the overwhelming power that a non-elected public official has in the government chief executive, would the panel agree that directly elected mayors should be in place as a more democratic way of making change happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And, sorry. Gee, Emma, come on, phone's in silent. I'm joking. Yeah, Mark, absolutely. And I have a couple of points to try and touch on there because me and you have talked about this a lot over the last couple of years. The big problem I have with local government is that a chief executive or any director of services simply isn't accountable. So that there is no one to, and they have no one to answer to. And I've always said,
except the department.
Yeah, but this is the thing, like, so to call them up to the department and have a chat with them, like, they should be called in front of Oireachtas committees, they should be called in front of PAC. The question should be asked to say, well, why are you constantly the worst county in the country for rates collections? Why are you constantly the worst county in the country for the highest amount of arrears? You know, I'm just picking a few things out. There is no real accountability, and that's just the way the structure is, and I think it's up to the Oireachtas to be able to turn around and just hold chief executives in. You see the way they've done it with the FAI, they've done it with other, and give them a real proper grilling. In terms of directly elected mayors, we're doing that, and we're doing it in Limerick, Cork, Dublin, and is it Limerick, Galway. I would love to see directly elected mayors in every county in the country. I think that would be absolutely brilliant, and that's where the real power lies, because and that's where the real, you know, you're coming along there with a vision for County Louth for 4 years, and you're going to be answerable to the public again in 4 years. You know, there's a much more of a drive and a desire to try and get out and make a change, rather than someone who's a career civil servant in a local authority for 30 or 40 years.
It's great to hear that from the government side, and I hope directly elected mayors become feature every county council. I think it would just, if people are surprised by the power councillors have, that's the reason. The power is not vested in people who win the mandate. It's vested in lifers, basically.
Yeah, I think the perception among the ordinary Joe Soaps, including me, is that the chief executive is answerable to the councillors.
Even our motions have no legal force, they're advisory.
I said perception.
Yeah.
I would like to see, reiterating what John, just confirming what John, directly elected mayors should be in every county. They really would drive a mandate for 4 years, and it would mean that certain issues that we've discussed tonight we could actually have real solutions to on local levels. And it would be something that it'll be interesting to see how the plebiscites work in the 4 areas, because I think that will be a lot to have a real impetus that we could try and get directly elected mayors in each county. Louth has a population that's the equivalent of Limerick City, the two main towns. Just to make that point.
Yes, very much so. Each county should have a directly elected mayor. It is well enough to have them answerable to the Oireachtas and to the Parliament as it's supposed to be now, and to the PAC. But ultimately, the only authority they should be answerable to is us, the people.
Another question up there. Do you want a microphone?
We have a mayor for the villages. So for me, the idea of